And welcome back to the PouncerAI Freelancer Education Series. As always, I'm Jerod Morris. I'm here with PouncerAI founder and CEO Sean Jackson. And Sean, back in the beginner series in lesson 6, we talked about setting your rates. And we talked about some key factors about how your rate is kind of how you position yourself. You want to think about it almost as a marketing strategy. Now, here in the expert series, we're really going to get into kind of some of the nitty gritty about how you actually maximize your earnings on Upwork and how you be strategic with that pricing. Anything from that first lesson, just in case people haven't watched it, and we highly recommend that you go through all these videos, but anything that you want to just refresh folks on from that first lesson so we're all up to speed here on this one.
Yeah, I think that we obsess too much about our hourly rate on Upwork. In fact, I wish they would get rid of it altogether. But since they haven't, what we said before is it is a positioning statement. When you're first starting out, you want to be in the Goldilocks zone of pricing, not too low, not too high, right in the middle, because you need to get jobs. And for good or for bad, clients will look at that hourly rate as a way of discriminating against one person versus the other, not in a bad way to discriminate. It's just a way to filter it down. As you become more proficient on the platform, you're going to be changing your hourly rates. And those hourly rates, again, from a positioning standpoint, are going to show you as an expert, right? I charge $150 an hour. I don't charge $50 an hour because it's going to attract different type of clients to you. But regardless of what that hourly rate is, what we've said before in this series is that that's not actually how you maximize the amount of money you get. In other words, right. Just because you're not working per hour, you're not that's not really the goal of being a successful freelancer as a professional, because what you want to do is maximize the value that you provide and the money earned from that value. And that is what the pros really think about. They don't really put it in context of, well, I'm going to spend 1.5 hours doing this. They're trying to work with clients who appreciate the value of what they deliver, and they're charging for the value that they deliver.
Yes. Now, what I'm really interested to learn more about in this lesson is I know that you have kind of a milestone strategy for helping to maximize revenue. Can you talk us through that? Because I think it'll be really helpful for folks looking to level up.
Absolutely. And I wrote an article on our community site talking about how to use milestone-based pricing. So everything that we're going to share in here is actually a part of this article that I went through, and you should read it when you get a chance because it does kind of go through the nitty-gritty. But let's kind of back up for just a second about why milestone pricing is so important. Okay. On most projects that professionals handle, they are what we have called in the past, they are large, complex projects, right? Now, many freelancers will have, and we're going to talk about this in another part of the Pro Series, more of a self-defined deliverable, and we'll talk about that. But I'm talking specifically about projects where they're a little bit larger, a little bit more complex, where you really don't know what it's going to take to complete the project, and you don't really know how much the client actually values the project. So the reason milestone-based pricing works so effectively well is that it answers the question for a client, how much will this cost? And it gives you flexibility to change that estimate of timing and cost as the project progresses. So the reason that we are big fans of milestone-based pricing on almost every project is the fact that we have an initial milestone that is a clearly defined deliverable with a clearly defined price and a clearly defined time estimate. And then for other milestones, we give rough cost and rough estimate. So I'll give you a practical example. If I am a mobile app developer, which we are, there are several stages that go into building a mobile app. We need to know what we need to build, what it's going to look like, all the technical requirements. Then we actually need to put it together. And then once we put it together, we need to test it. And once we test it, we need to publish it. Those are just 4 very high level milestones. Well, when a client asks, how much is it going to cost to build my app? We have a general idea, but we don't know the details of putting exactly the time and cost. So the way that we got around that, Jerod, was we always, in our first milestone, called it a discovery milestone, where we charged the client to spend time with them, understanding their needs, understanding all the requirements, and delivering to them a design for the app that we've been talking about. It is from that milestone that we can accurately price the additional milestones and timing that come from this particular work. You could use the same thing, okay, for let's say a design project, right? You can charge a minor little discovery fee to understand what the client needs, and then you can charge for more through the milestones that you provide to them to deliver all of the different things that are required for this one graphic design. So it's not a universal tool, but for most of the high-end work that you would like to get from Upwork, milestone-based approach is crucial in my opinion.
Do clients ever balk at that kind of strategy?
Yes, but you're going to have to explain what the reason that you're putting it together, because they don't know a lot about the project, and you're going to have to leverage the fact that they don't know a lot. Now, they're going to sometimes give you tons of documentation. Well, even with that documentation, you're going to want to sit there and go through and say, okay, once we have this first milestone done, the additional milestones may have to change. Yes, you've given me a lot up front, but which is really a priority, which is not, what's going to be hard, what's not going to be, what's going to be easy. All of these things require time, which is why you can better accurately price the first milestone, because once you have that discovery done, you can give them better estimates. And the way you get around them complaining about it, just say it may actually be lower than this. We just don't know until we go through that discovery milestone together.
Are there any other potential issues that you encountered with this strategy that we should let people know about?
Yes. I mean, if it's a very small project, it doesn't work very well, obviously. This is more of an approach for bigger, more complex jobs. And I think that in that circumstance, it is, you just kind of have to give a price out and do your best, quoting it up. I think this is a little bit more sales oriented when you're presenting this to a client, because you do have to, convince them to do that first milestone. And you really have to caveat that I can give you a budget for timing and cost, but it will not be accurate until we go through this first milestone, the second one, the third one, because then I can continue to refine it down. Now, when I say it's a sales thing, is that you want to come back to the client and say, is this going to work for you? We can maybe get the cost down a little bit more, but we're going to have to take some things out. So that's why we need to do this together. So it is a function of negotiating and convincing them, which makes it a little bit more challenging. But the reality is that clients don't know how much a project is going to cost, and you probably don't know how much a project is going to cost until you get into the details of it. And to be frank, the only way you get into the details is if somebody's paying you for your time to do it.
Yeah. Is there anything that you can do? I mean, when you're looking for jobs in the job selection process, when you're figuring out who to submit a proposal to, or even in the proposal process, like what questions you ask to kind of help qualify the client for if they're going to be right for you if you're using this strategy?
Yeah, I think qualifying the client is going to be tough. I think that anytime you see a job, and I've got one here on the screen to show an example, this is one where generally, it's a complex project if they're writing a lot about it. You see this on the screen here, Jerod?
Yeah.
This is a mobile app, and they have a lot of thoughts about this mobile app. So I generally think, now this is always a truism, but the more that they put into this, the better for you, because there's so many questions that come from this. And of course, you're going to have to, because it's complex, create up milestones for it. Now, this is where, funny enough, that we can actually help you, because one of the things that we have inside of Pouncer, of course, is our templating system, but we do provide you a template, which we call a prompt playground. This is where you can use AI to kind of play around with this stuff. Well, what I can do is, if I just want to kind of do a sanity check on this thing, I can go under the toolbar here and pick this little snippet called detailed estimate. And what this is, it's an AI prompt that says, go analyze the job and look at my skills and experience and give me, a basic estimate on doing the work. So I'll just go ahead and generate the proposal for this. So because AI can look at the job information and who I am and has a repository of how jobs like this are done in general, it can actually give me a quick estimate on the different milestones
Wow. Yeah.
required to get this done. Now, the hourly rate may be wrong. You may need to put in, what hourly rate, but, at least as a sanity check, you could sit there and say, okay, here's the number of milestones that, AI thinks this is going to require. Okay, so we have 7 milestones here. Here's approximately the number of hours. Here's, basically what needs to be done. And here's what the cost estimate is. So really just using, PouncerAI, you can kind of go in and say, all right, for this particular job, it's obviously very complex. What would be the milestones that I would put into it? And then use that as a framework to engage with the client to say, I see several steps in this. Let's start with milestone number 1, which is project and planning and requirement gathering, which is that initial discovery phase. And then you could tell them, I think it's going to cost us, between $30,000 and $45,000, but I won't have a solid estimate for you until we do milestone number 1. So if they're comfortable with this range right here, then all you have to do is get them to agree to that initial 1,500 and then, or 2,000, whatever you're charging. And then from there, you can further refine each one of these as you go and get more information along each particular step.
Gotcha. What else do folks need to know about the milestone process? I mean, either setting it up or how you explain it, any other just little tips and tricks that you've gained from your experience that can help people do this better?
I think what pros know is they have a defined process on how they deliver work. So, and they will take time to document it. So the tip that I always recommend is just document your process for delivering work. And then realizing that each one of those major milestones are ways that you can should be shared with a client so that they can understand not only how you're going to get the work done, but some things will change in the process. But it all starts with documenting. This is why pros document their processes. They have a process. And when they get a client on board, they're putting clients into those processes, with the first step being a way to get more details so they don't get trapped by giving a quote for something that ends up being a nightmare.
One last question on this. You said in the beginning, you're probably not going to be using this because you're going to have fairly defined, pretty simple projects that you're going to be doing. Like, how do you know when it's time to start this? Like, what are some indicators that, hey, this is a job. Okay, I've done 10 jobs and it's all kind of been basic, but now here's a job that I could actually start using this milestone-based
I think
approach.
once you have your confidence up and your experience up, I think that if you were just coming into freelancing in general, you're still trying to figure out what your processes are. You're still trying to figure out what it is you do and how you deliver it. Once you have that confidence, though, then you can apply this almost from the very beginning. Though in the initial stages on Upwork, you do want smaller end jobs that are not as complex, simply because you need to get those 5-star reviews and get your job success score up. That does actually matter quite a bit. So in the very beginning, small little jobs, you can do. But then as your experience grows, you're going to want to chase down some of the bigger jobs out there. Build me a website, right? Design a brochure. Okay. I need you to SEO my site. Okay. These are very large, complex jobs that have multiple phases to them. And the most important thing is to get the client engaged with you on a small job first that you can then build from over time. Because once you have that relationship and you've defined that first milestone, that small little job you're doing for them, then they're building up trust in what you provide. You're basically building confidence that you can get them what they want. So start small, land and expand, I think is the term, right? Start
Land and
small,
expand.
with a small little milestone, get that thing done, and then you can move up from there. In our world as mobile app developers, this is true for almost all type of development. That initial discovery phase is crucial. And I think we can always give a rough estimate, and we always caveat saying we won't know the details until we do milestone 1. Let's get that done, and then we can give you a formalized cost. That's it.
Yep. And look, there's a reason why lessons like these were saved for the expert series. You can have some success not doing something like this. We talked about it in the beginner series. You can even get to the intermediate level, but to really get to that expert level and really knock it out of the park, this is the stuff that's going to separate you from the people who aren't doing it. And our next lesson, Sean, I think really fits that description. So much of what we talked about so far, it's kind of text and numbers. You're going to talk about how you actually get on video and pitch and make a difference. And this is something that you and Daniel have really done that really made a big difference in your success. And we're going to talk about that in our next lesson, lesson number 3 in the expert series. Stick with us. We'll be back with that soon.